The Holy Gospel according to Matthew, the 5th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. People do not light a lamp and put it under a bushel basket. Rather, they put it on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
So I love these words from Jesus about us being salt and light. And I think over the years, I've actually focused much more on the salt. And that could be because I think a lot about salt as someone who has been having high blood pressure and working to keep it under control for decades. I always think about how much salt is in something. But today, like Brian, I am drawn to the light. You are the light of the world. That's what Jesus says to us. How does that sound to you this morning? My first response is, wait a minute, Jesus, I thought you said you were the light of the world. Does it feel like a burden? Does it feel like an expectation to be something that you are not? One thing that's so interesting to me is that Jesus doesn't tell us to be light. He says, you are light. It's not a commandment or a directive, it's a statement. A statement of identity about who we are. I hear it as gospel, as good news, not a burden. All those other identities and labels that get put on us, that we put on ourselves, they may or may not be true. But Jesus is the truth that sets us free. You are the light of the world. The good news is that the you here is plural. So it's not about us individually. It's about us as the church, as people who are trying to follow Jesus. Now, I know it's bold to try to improve on the words of Jesus, but I think it would be clearer to say, you are the light in the world. I say that because, as Brian helpfully pointed out with those batteries I would like to get, we are not the source of the light. The source is the brilliant, inexhaustible love of God. And maybe if Jesus were speaking in metaphors today, he'd say, you are the light bulbs of the world, and God is the energy, the power that flows through those light bulbs. Light is what enables people to see. It's what enables people to see the presence of God, the action of God, to see what matters to God and where this world is headed when the reign of God, the rule of God, comes in its fullness. Isaiah, in our first reading, gives a compelling picture of what the light looks like when he describes the kind of fasting that is pleasing to God. It's loosing the bonds of injustice, letting the oppressed go free, sharing bread with the hungry, housing the homeless poor, clothing the naked, and not hiding yourself from your own kin, which I hear as recognizing people in need as part of our human family. When we, as a gathered people, do that, then your light shall break forth like the dawn. It's acts of justice and mercy. The light that we are is acts of justice and mercy done in the world as the church. Now, that light shone a week ago Thursday up on Capitol Hill. Susie, Linda, Lee, Pastor Rachel, and I joined about 500 clergy and faith leaders at the Lutheran Church of the Reformation, just down the street from the Supreme Court. And there was a good contingent of local Lutherans, including our Bishop, Phil Hirsch. And 25 faith leaders came from Minneapolis. And though the majority of people were Christians, we had a powerful presence of Unitarians, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, and Hindus. We were there to pray with our feet by calling on Congress to not give one more dime to ICE. From our various faith traditions, we spoke about our common calling to love our neighbor. We began with a prayer vigil, and it was followed by a press conference. And during that press conference, we were joined briefly by Senator Coons of Delaware, who spoke as a person of faith. He shared the breaking news that an agreement had been reached between the White House and Senate leaders to separate out the funding for the Department of Homeland Security from the funding packages for the other parts of the government. And that separation was very important because it meant that senators could vote to restrict funding ICE without forcing a government shutdown. And until that moment, it had seemed very unlikely. The whole sanctuary broke out in applause, and Reverend Adam Taylor said, "I don't know about you, but I think that was a God moment." We were light, but you could see there was a lot of power behind the light. And after that powerful grounding, a group of us accompanied the Minnesota faith leaders to Capitol Hill, visiting senators' offices and sharing the stories of the cruel actions of ICE in their neighborhoods. We spoke from a place of faith. And a second group stayed behind for training in nonviolent civil disobedience. We marched to the Hart Senate office building singing songs, and our singing stopped when we entered the building and went through security. When all of us were gathered in the atrium, we sat down and started singing a song in Spanish, and the words translated, "You are not alone, together we will bring freedom." You're not allowed to sing in the building, so the Capitol Police gave us the first of 3 warnings to stop. And after the second one, the clergy and faith leaders who were there to support stopped singing and moved away. And immediately after the third warning, the police began arresting us, confining our hands behind us with zip ties. 58 of us were arrested. Over half of the people for the first time. 10 of us were Lutherans, including our bishop, and 4 connected to Christ Lutheran. When Bishop Hirsch was asked about his decision to risk arrest for the first time, he said it was the right thing at the right time. In a way, it was kind of a spotlight, focusing our attention on the level of cruelty and injustice being carried out by our government with our tax dollars, a way that is so contrary to everything God wants for us. It was also not hiding our lights of God's love under a bushel basket. Through our visits to Senate offices and through this civil disobedience, we shone a light not just on the horror and injustice that is happening and the need for it to stop, but also on the message that there is another way. The light reached far beyond the senators. There was some media coverage, and to be honest, I was a little surprised and discouraged that there wasn't more. But then I heard an amazing story. Margaret Kulkarni, who's been connected to Christ Lutheran for a few years and comes occasionally, came and wanted to do civil disobedience. And I was able to vouch for her as a trusted person, and she was all in for it. One of her sons has run for Congress in Texas, and he has a wide presence on social media. He posted the photo of his mother getting arrested with other people of faith trying to stop the funding for ICE, and it was viewed by 77,000 people. A light on a lampstand, giving light to all in the house. The day after this action, I went to McFarland Middle School to tutor in an 8th grade English class. And the teacher was doing a lesson on critical thinking and the First Amendment. She had shown a video of some of the protests in Minneapolis, and the class was discussing whether or not what they were doing was protected by the First Amendment. The teacher knew that I had been in Minneapolis the week before, so when I walked in, she said, "Miss Eustis was just in Minneapolis last week, so we can get a first-hand account." And I said that I had just done civil disobedience in the Senate office the night before, and she said that was great, and she invited me to share about both. So I wound up talking to 2 classes, and it was clear that these 8th graders were actually paying attention. There is a high immigrant population in the school, so ICE is not a distant issue for them. It is something that eats at their sense of well-being every day. What are the chances that the English teacher I volunteer with would be doing a lesson that gave me the opportunity to shine this light among youth who are living in a lot of fear, whose families are living in actual darkness because they are afraid to go outside? It was definitely a God thing. In just a few minutes, we'll have a chance to hear about another way that we are letting our light shine through the mentoring program that we are launching. Mentoring is a way to shine a light on a young person, a way to let them know that they are seen, that they matter. It's a way to help young people grow into being their own unique lights. And in the amazing way that God has made us, it is also a way to unleash the glow of God's love in our own lives. Letting our lights shine is not only good for others, it's good for us. I want to close with one more story. I shared at the beginning that high blood pressure is part of my life that has come to me through my genetics. And I have a great doctor, and it has been under control for many years until this fall. There were some changes that were made to my medication because it had been dangerously high, but it still wasn't where it should be. The same day that I spoke with the middle schoolers, I had an appointment with my doctor. She spends a lot of time with me, and after talking together, she said, "Objectively, you have a stressful life." Then she asked me how my blood pressure readings had been. And I had to admit that after taking them twice a day for weeks, between going to Minneapolis and everything else, I hadn't done it. So then she said, "It will be interesting to see how all of this affects you. It could go either way. It could make it more elevated, or actually doing something could make it go down." When she took my blood pressure, it was 120/60. So I need to be careful not to give medical advice, yet it's hard for me not to see the amazing way that God is working in my own life, and hard not to want the same thing for all of you. May we each hear the good news that we are the light of the world. Thanks be to God. Amen.